understand the. Okay, got it.
Yes, hi.
Okay, hello. So today we're going to talk about the Age of Aquarius and the prophecy of prophecies for that age. So I'm going to start with the first part of it is probably the most controversial part, weirder part, and we'll have to have the next podcast be about using astrology for prophecy and other ways of doing prophecy. So this time I'm not going to go into the details of it, but basically the idea is that right now we're moving from the age of Pisces, which in the sky is two fish that are tied together by a rope, and different cultures see that differently. I mean, this is a sort of a visual representation that's then a sort of an imaginative thing that is then projected onto the star patterns in the sky. I mean, there aren't any fish in the sky, right? They're just stars in the sky. But we're moving from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, and Aquarius then is a water carrier where water is flowing out of a container. For some cultures, they see just the container from the stars, and other cultures actually see the water coming down from the container. Different cultures have different people pouring, deities or whatever, pouring the water from the container. But what this is really about with respect to astronomy is the precession of the equinox. So now they call it general precession. So the idea is that this is a this is a 26,000 year cycle. And it goes and it has got to do with the way in which the planet's orbit wobbles. And the way they describe it is like the way in which a top wobbles back and forth when it spins. And so the Earth spins and goes back and forth while it spins, and it's not it's spinning uh, uh, such that at at the particular time of the spring equinox, over 26,000 years, it moves slightly over each year. So it takes 26,000 years for it to get from the first sign of the zodiac to the last sign of the zodiac and then start over again. So now we're going from the sign of Pisces into the sign of Aquarius. Now, one problem also with this is that Pisces and Aquarius, for example, in the sky slightly overlap. Again, it's the stars themselves upon which these images are projected are thousands, maybe millions of light years apart. They're not actually in the same place as each other in the sky. And by the time we get the light, I mean, they are possibly long gone. We don't know what they're doing now. It's not now that we're seeing. We're seeing thousands and thousands and thousands, possibly millions of years away from now. And the stars in space don't have anything to do with each other. It's just how they're appearing to the planet. And so when we talk about astrology in the next podcast, we'll talk about what astrology is if you separate it from astronomy. And so, but if with the 12 signs of the zodiac, each of these cycles, I mean, each of these signs, that is, the signs, what sign appears at the equinox that moves. And it takes approximately 2,167 years for it to move from one sign to the next sign. But this is also very approximate because some signs take up more space in the sky and some signs take up less space in the sky. So it's just sort of a vague approximation. And the idea is that I mean, one reason to start by thinking about it this way is that it gives us an idea of how the way we normally think about space is relational space. That is, that's the space in the objects on Earth. So when I go into my room, it looks like exactly the same space as the last time I was my room, even though it's now winter. And, let's say I haven't been in there since summer, it still looks to me like the same space. But if we're looking at space as something outside the envelope of the gravity of the planet, we're not in the same space at all. We're not in the same space now as we were when we started this podcast. We're hurtling through space, and the sun is hurtling through space. According to the astronomers, the stars are getting further and further apart. And so everything is moving, everything is changing. So the idea isn't that the zodiac sign is literally causing something, because it's in it, the stars that make it up are flying apart, and we're moving, and it's all moving and changing and everything like that. Their influences, what we're seeing in the sky, isn't actually there anymore. It's just the light that's coming to us. So it isn't that that's causing something, it's that it's a marker. And that's the same. And then we'll talk about this when we talk about doing divination. It's like, if you have a vision that you're wearing a certain sweater, when something happens and you want that something to happen, wear that sweater. It's like, but not because the sweater is cause, it's because that marks that event. That event happens with that sweater. It's the accidents that line up. And so the idea then is that in the new age will be an age where Aquarius will be in the sky at the spring equinox. Not that Aquarius, the stars in that sign, will cause something, but that they'll be in the sky at that time, marking that time.
So you're saying our perception, it's like kind of like looking in a mirror, but it's not the actual reality of what's going out there. It's just like our it's what we get to see, our perception.
Exactly, exactly. And
Okay.
so, and like I say, we'll talk about how that doesn't invalidate astrology as a
Oh,
way
I can't
to
wait.
get vision, to get future seeing, right? It doesn't invalidate that. And we'll talk about that in another podcast, because that's a longer story. So that's the marker of the new age. Now, people disagree about not only whether it's already started or not, because the Pisces and the Aquarius, they are they are both slightly overlapping in the sky at this point. Signs of the zodiac that sort of overlap in the sky at the equinox. So there's a controversy about when it starts, and there's a controversy about how long each one of these things literally as opposed to approximately, and so all of that is controversial. But the Mayan calendar also, the Mayans kept, many ancient people were very aware of these cycles in the sky. And the Mayan calendar claimed that it started, that is the Age of Aquarius started in 2012.
Mhm.
And that's coincidental because the prophecies that I'm now going to talk about start in our contemporary age, have our contemporary age starting in 2012.
And it would make sense that the signs overlap because we're definitely just have the baby footprint of the Aquarius energy. We're still like thick in the fighting
Yeah,
to the two fish fighting on the rope to die or fight for their lives. I don't know. There's definitely that. When you talk about the two fish, I think of polarity and how extreme polarities are getting, as if that those fish are getting pulled apart.
Yes.
And yeah, Aquarius is just a whisper right now. It's
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
people are waking up to it, but
Absolutely, exactly. So it's coming in. It's coming in, but it isn't 100% here. It's coming in. Now, the first one, now I want to talk about uh, three prophecies, uh, one after another, of
okay.
what this new age of Aquarius is going to be like. And maybe this podcast should be called, the the new age. What is the age of Aquarius? What will that be like? So the first one I want to talk about is the white buffalo calf woman prophecy. This is a prophecy that was given to the Lakota Sioux, but I have a personal connection to that through my mother. Now, my mother was an anthropologist. She became internationally well known when she uh, did a study of a famous um, um, exorcism in the 1970s in Germany, where the Catholic Church, these priests from the Catholic Church, tried to do an exorcism for this poor Catholic girl who then died during the exorcism. And then they were accused of negligent homicide. And my mother was a witness in that trial. And then she wrote a book about it and about that particular prophecy. It's been made into two horror movies.
I remember you mentioning that before. I've told my daughter because she loves horror movies just to try to relate to the work we do. I'm like, no,
Totally.
possession is real. You don't, and when we talked about possession, you talked about you don't want to do, you don't want to mess, you
Don't
want
want
to
to.
match the spirit with the medicine. You don't want to do something that's not going to fit that. So your
That's
mom actually wrote a book about it. I didn't
Yeah,
realize
yeah, she
that.
wrote a book about it, The Exorcism of Annalisa Michel. She wrote it in German. That's what its translation is into English. I think one of the horror movies was The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and I think the other one was called Requiem or something like that, but I could be wrong. Actually, we got a lot of money for that because my mother died before it came out, and so they gave the money to the kids. So I think we got a carpet for our living room or something for our share.
Nice. Yeah.
But
Two movies.
anyway,
Wow.
but the idea, I mean, the way in which she's connected to it is that she thought of herself as a buffalo spirit. And this comes from the Native American context in the Southwest. She was studying Native American, specifically Pueblo tribes, nations, their practices. And she really wanted to she wanted to better relate to it and figure out whether this was real or not, and were spirits real. There was and I think, and I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again here in this context. She had a property, Cuyumungue, which had the ruins of two pueblos on it, ancient pueblos on it, unoccupied since I think 1600 or something like that. And there was a a sandstone pillar on it that looked like a stone lion, that looked like a mountain lion. And one of the Pueblo nations that live in that vicinity used to come onto her property and give offerings to it. And there was a main shrine for those stone lion spirits in the mountains. My mother thought, and my sister and I saw those accidentally. We had a fire in front of that. We didn't know anything about it. We were just hiking out in the outback. It was 273 acres of wildlands that she had there. And this was this cool looking pillar, and we lit a fire under it, and then these extremely scary uh, stone lion spirit came out, and we were terrified and ran away, and it was a big adventure. I
Is that
wrote up.
because light, you know how when we do our altars, you're
Yeah,
like, the candle attracts the spirits. You literally lit a big fire that attracted all the spirits.
that's it. That's it. Yeah, we know what we were doing, right? But my mother thought, okay, well, if we had seen it, she went to see it. But she thought it was a healing spirit, and she would leave offerings and nothing would happen and it wouldn't come to her. It turns out it was a hunting spirit. And when she finally did find it, she had gone with a bunch of students up into the mountains, to a place where people who were not Native American couldn't go. And but she got permission because of her anthropology credentials. They couldn't find it. They got totally lost. The spirits did not want them there, and so they could not find the shrine. And my mother was coming back from there, and she was 65. She was hyperventilated. It was lots of trekking up and down arroyos and so on and so on. And she was underneath this tree. I wrote about it from her story called Pueblo Spirits in the Life of Felicitas D. Goodman. That was her name, Felicitas D. Goodman.
I
And
got that book.
did you? Yeah,
I
okay,
have it. Yeah.
yeah,
Actually, Jane, who does Erica's estate, Jane gave me that book. She had it. I think it was Erica's, who was your mom's friend, right?
that's right, that's right, that's right. And then that tells her story about how she came to this. And so basically, she was on the other side of this canyon. There was this wind, and the wind then became these stone lion spirits, and they were very angry and hostile. They wanted to kill her because they did not want her on their sacred land, because she was an anthropologist and she was going to expose it, and they didn't want it to be exposed. And so they were trying to kill her, and they were whirling the sand so that it was in her mouth and her nose, and she was having difficulty breathing. And then the brother buffalo spirit came and saved her, and then told her that she was actually herself a buffalo spirit, and that after death she would become a buffalo spirit. She got her true name, which was Buffalo Seed Woman, right after that, from the Native Americans. And then she understood that she was a buffalo spirit. And what we get from that is that the buffalo spirits, what they do is they give us ways of contacting the spirit world. And so, what my mother's contribution to that was huge for our new age was the posture trances, where you take a certain posture and you go into trance. This is not something that any of the native peoples that I know about do, but ancient peoples apparently did. They
Wow.
recorded these postures. My mother discovered them.
Mhm. Remembered them. They came through her as a buffalo portal. And the seed makes sense because she was the seed that bloomed and remembered.
Exactly.
You can
It,
preserve a seed. I have a quick question.
yeah,
How do you
please.
find out what your spirit is? Because, I mean, does it just come in time? Like, I want to know if I'm a buffalo spirit. Am I a wolf spirit? Am I a star spirit? How do you find out? Or do we it doesn't not matter.
Um, I mean, that's an interesting question. Um, I mean, you would have to ask that question in a trance.
Oh, okay. Good
Yeah,
to know for us listeners when we do the trance.
yeah, that's right. And we're going to do trances that are relevant to this talk. One on Saturday and one next month. And these are the deities that are relevant to here, to this time, you know. And so, but the reason I wanted to tell this story was because the prophecy is a Lakota prophecy, but I take it very personally because these buffalo spirits appear to me personally in my dreams, and as my mother, as a buffalo spirit, appears to me. And so I kind of get the inside messages through my mother. I get these messages. And what I'm going to tell now is about these messages. Now, the first one is the Lakota prophecy itself. So, according to the Lakota in their history, at the beginning of the previous age, the white buffalo calf woman appeared to them. And now the story is that there were these two brothers who then saw this beautiful woman in front of them. And the first brother said, I mean, she doesn't look like she's protected. She's not she's not carrying any weapons, because some of them the women carried big knives, you know. She's not anything like that. She looks totally unprotected. And so he went to her with the intention of violating her, of raping her. And when he touches her, he turned into a cloud and then into ashes and bones. The second brother saw this happen, and so he treated her with respect. And then he asked her,
Let that be a lesson, men out there. No.
totally, you better listen to this. So he treated her with respect and asked her, why are you appearing to us? What is going on? And she said that she was there to help them um, uh, figure out how to live in the coming age on the Great
Of the
Plains.
age of Pisces, yes.
That's right, in the Pisces age, exactly, in that age. What they should do. And she said, prepare for me. I'll come in 4 days. I think she said he went back to his village. They prepared. She came. And then she gave them a series of understandings, including how to use the medicine pipe, and then 7 other sacred rituals, and then how to use the buffalo on the Great Plains for their abundance, how to catch them, slaughter them, eat them, use the hides and all of this sort of stuff, and how to live, how they can live. When she was leaving, she turned into a buffalo. She was a buffalo spirit. She was also I've heard various versions from various Native Americans, the goddess of peace and all sorts of other versions, but she was a buffalo spirit. And she turned into a white buffalo, and she said that the next age would start, would be she prophesied that they would know when the next age starts by the 4 white buffaloes would have appeared by that time. By the time the 4th white buffalo appears, that's when the new age, and from our perspective, the age of Aquarius, would begin. And the first, now, this isn't an albino buffalo. This is a white buffalo. It's white with black eyes, black nose, black tip of the tail, and male. And according to the biologists, the odds of a buffalo of this sort being born is like 1 in 10 million. I mean, extremely rare, because it's not an albino buffalo. It's a white buffalo, but with these markings on it, and male. The first was born in the early 1800s. The second was born in 1994. The third was born in 2011 on the Lakota Sioux Ranch in Texas, which was owned by the great 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 grandson of Sitting Bull. And it's in this third white buffalo's uh, story that the original myth then is redone only for our age. So about a few days before they were going to celebrate the first birthday of this sacred animal, someone came on the land and butchered and skinned this white buffalo along with his mother. the father of this buffalo had been killed by lightning the month before. And this was an act of disrespect and insult to the Lakota. And this is then the relevant myth to understand for what the disrespectful brother does in our age. A month later, the fourth white buffalo was born.
10 million chance and another was
Exactly.
born. Where was
Exactly.
that one born?
That one was born somewhere in Colorado. No, in Connecticut, I think, from a man who was. I saw a picture of him. He's 100% committed to buffalo and thinks of himself also as a buffalo. So appropriate.
Oh, that is great. I love that.
He's still alive. That buffalo, if that buffalo is dead, it's died of natural causes. That white buffalo is still living, as far as I know.
It'd be 11, right? That was you said 2011?
No, this one was born then in 2012, a month after the last one was killed.
That's crazy. So literally the Mayans were like 2012 and then the buffalo
And
were, wow, that's
2012
so
is when the buffalo prophecy then came true. So that was then, from their perspective, it's the beginning of the new age. And that's, from my perspective, then, given my personal relationship to the buffalo spirits, that's then the beginning of the new age. And
Yep,
the
that's
advice,
what I heard too.
okay, and the advice for that prophecy is that tribalism leads to ashes and bones. That the disrespect, the tribalism, and that's then, as you were saying earlier, that tension between the Pisces fish, right? It's that people say, the racism, the culture wars, the all of that stuff that's going on right now.
That was the whole Piscean era. I mean, unfortunately, a big part of my, ancestors, the Vikings, they're just like, oh, I want to conquer this mine. That's not yours. It's just, I
that's
can't even get that mentality.
That's right. That's exactly it. And that's the whole thing. It's a time, now we're in a time of sorting. And that's part of this idea of this prophecy. That is, just as in the previous prophecy, the disrespectful brother was destroyed. In this prophecy, everyone who goes in that path of tribalism, just as you were saying, that, no, I'm going to conquer you, all of that stuff, that gets destroyed. That aspect dies. And so the people who then are able to go into the new age are the ones that hear the white buffalo calf woman's voice, the ones that hear the advice from the buffalo spirits, the ones that are open their hearts to, and their instincts and their intuitions, as you're doing with people, to the spirit messages,
I love
and
that.
and walk the spirit path. Those are the ones that are then going with the respectful brother, so to speak. That's the way into the new age. And so the holders of tribalism and the ones that are saying, well, this is the way we did it in the past, we should continue doing it that way, we can feel sorry for them. They're not able to be flexible. Some of them are in situations where it's impossible for them to be flexible, but their way ends. And
Yeah, they're in the sorting. I think of that prophecy rock that out west in the United States, it's like half the people go up and then half people fall off the cliff. And I feel like those people, they're just gonna fall off the cliff.
they're going to fall off the cliff. Exactly. Some of them
Yeah.
are doing it voluntarily. There are these poor people, who are holding on to their tribalism, holding on to their racism, not thinking about what their actions, the impact of their actions on others.
Mm.
And also the tribalism that comes from holding to the human as opposed to all beings, all beings.
I once heard that Pisces was the age of I, me, mine, and that Aquarius was the age of we and community.
And exactly, we and community. That's exactly right. Me, we and community. Exactly. And those people who aren't able to do that, their way ends. That's just the way of it. Their way ends.
But I wonder
So
when is it going to be our like? I mean, if it's a almost 3,000 year cycle, is that going to be a
I
struggle
know.
for several hundred years?
That's right. And so this is, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to start with the idea of the age of Aquarius, because this is cyclic. These ages come and go in a cycle. They're long,
Yeah.
you know, it's starting now and then it'll go for, what is it, at least 2,000 years before it changes into the next way, and so, and but we're now on the slide, so to speak, we're going that direction. And if we want ourselves and our descendants and the human species actually to continue, we need to go in the new way. We need to hear the voices of the future and travel in that direction. So the way to survive in the new age is by uniting across diversity. Different people, different beliefs, different creatures, all uniting for the good of all, to create paradise for each of us with our differences. Instead of saying, oh, we're all united in community because we're all the same, which, as you say, is the way of Pisces, we're uniting in our communities, enjoying and celebrating our differences.
Oh, I love that. Celebrating our differences.
Yes, and you can see that that is beautiful and possible. We just have to flip the switch, you know? We just have to, go there. So then I got another Buffalo Spirit message, and I think my memory is that this might have been our first podcast when we talked about this one in March 2020, where it was the beginning of the pandemic, and I was and the city was locked down. No, there was no. I was walking outside, and there were no cars or anything on the streets, and I was in the middle of this big, you know, 4-lane highway where usually I couldn't walk at all. I'm walking down this highway, and there are these low rolling dark clouds coming in my direction, and they turned into buffalo spirits. And my mother was among them, and they gave out, sort of in this group voice, they gave out their message. I was not the only person hearing this message. I was one of many hearing this message. It was like opening the door. It was like all of those who are hearing the buffalo spirits, this is our message for how to survive in this transitional time. What we first have to do, the first thing we have to do after this celebration of diversity, the first thing we have to do to survive in the new age. And I'll just read the quote of what they said. Bring the plants into your cities. And we had a podcast about this. Bring the plants into your cities. Treat them with respect. Remember, they are the elder beings. Without plants, life is impossible. They are as sentient as you are. Plants give gifts which should be reciprocated. Make your plants happy. They want to be with sister plants like corn, squash, beans. Turn your lawns into gardens. Grow food in your yards, not grass. For yourself, food for yourself and other creatures. There will be food shortages. Beware, there will be food shortages. Be good to plants. And for me personally, that was a huge revelation. I had never, I mean, I have less than a green thumb, I mean, less than a brown thumb. I'm vaguely scared of plants. I'm a plant, you know.
Hey, it's we now. You don't have to do it alone, Susan. We will do the
You
plans
guys
together.
do it. But I had never even thought of plants as the kind of things that could be happy, you know? It was just like things.
I was walking in my neighborhood several years ago and I first heard a tree say, "Look at my new flowers around me," and they speak very low and very slow, but somehow I could hear them, and so then I started noticing how city trees are different than country trees,
Oh,
and
wow.
I can actually hear them and yeah, trees. Now
Oh,
I don't know
that is
about all
so
plants, but I can definitely hear the tree people.
that is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. And that's exactly what we have to learn to do. We have to learn to listen and to hear what they want, you know?
Mhm.
Because we want to make them happy because we depend upon them. And as we talked in that podcast, they're horrified by the way the farming is done now. It's rape from their perspective. They just really, really are upset about it. And the plants will, we won't be able to do that much longer. We're
No.
poisoning the earth, you
The
know?
land is so I don't remember what year it was, a couple years ago when the I had made that promise to my old family land, which is now all sold to
Yeah,
someone else. But I
yeah.
went out there and I did the ceremony and the land of traditional farming is like pasty, powdery, so sad, just begging to be. But I mean, from other seers, what I hear is that, we're going to be kind of forced into this. I'll be curious. I'm going to,
So
obviously,
that's how
you
it's going
probably
to
have
go.
more, but
That's how
yeah,
it's
I
going
don't think people will willingly grow. Unfortunately, they're not going to willingly, some of us on our street will willingly grow, but I think that the society will be forced into it, right?
right, exactly, exactly. And that's about the next prophecy. So this one, I was shown a posture, and that's again, we'll do that next month. I was shown a posture, the green mother posture, where you take this posture and you turn into a plant. And you've done that one, and I've done that one. It's amazing. I mean, how cool is it to be a plant? I mean, who knew?
It's so magical, and I'll never forget. I got to lead the Green Goddess trance at a retreat in 2020, and when we were opening the four directions, the wind and the rain it came in, and as soon as we were done, it stopped, and the sun. I mean, it's a Mother Nature. It
Wow.
is it is a trance that connects us back to the plant kingdom and our nature, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. And as you say, I mean, we need to listen, and the only way we can do that is because we're so alienated, right? Is by opening up to the plant world. And this posture is an aspect of the Aztec goddess of running water. I mean, can be anything more appropriate for the age of Aquarius than the goddess of running water,
Yeah,
right?
that's
And
right.
she's teaching us, and that's the posture we're going to do on Saturday. She's teaching us how to adapt to the new world, to the new age. And our way of adapting, we have to learn how to listen like you do. Listen to the trees, listen to the plants. And when people and in the trance sessions when we've done this posture, people get advice and their plants talk to them and tell them what to do and how to help them, how to help the plants, which is so important. It's so important. So then I had one more uh, uh, vision. And I haven't told you about this one, which in August 2021, where again the Buffalo Spirits came to me. And this is not like as we've talked before, I've been doing prophecy since I was a teenager. And that's one on one with a person, and I can read them. And we've talked about how to do that. And like I say, in the next thing, we'll also talk about other ways to do that. I've never, ever, except for this one prophecy, seen into the future without just seeing into an individual person's future. But
Okay.
this was a message again from the Buffalo Spirits. And they gave me this vision. And actually, it was a very upscale, I mean, not upscale, uh, it made me feel much better about what is happening around us because I could see how we were being led and forced into a new era of the human development. So the idea, I saw an image of the, I'm sure beyond my lifespan. I mean, I'm in my 70s. This might be, who knows how far in the future, although I think almost all of our technology, we could do this. I have never ever seen this, though we don't do this. And I'm hoping that someone who hears this podcast will be able to start making these things. Because what I saw was humans were living in hives, in cities that looked like like mushrooms, where the tall buildings with these rounded umbrella shapes over them, and they had the so they were the climate outside the cities had was either too wet, too dry, uh, too hot, inhospitable, inhospitable to humans. So
So
the
global warming had taken
global
over
had
by then.
taken over. Humans could no longer live in the
Oh
countryside.
my goodness.
There were
Wow.
less of us, and we were collected together into these hives, and we communicated with each other and perhaps also with other hive cities through electronics, which we've
Mhm.
already got. But we
Okay.
didn't travel. Very rarely did people live, rarely did people leave these hives. In these hives, we were living with the plants that we eat.
Hmm.
And the plants were um, on balconies and on rooftops and inside glass rooms and in basements with these structures that were giving them these um, uh, um, um, weather conditions that made them happy, you know, and so we could grow things, but it wasn't monocrop agriculture. It was agriculture where they were living with their companion plants, happy plants, wild plants that were happy, that were given lives where we could listen to them, we could hear them, and we were giving them what they wanted. They were giving us their gifts, which was their food. And in response to that, we were helping them grow. And in these cities, there were these huge umbrella structures. And these, these umbrella structures were like nothing I've ever seen. And I hope, like I say, somebody who lives who listens to this will figure out some way to make them because I think everything about this is possible now. So these are like AI, that is artificial intelligence. They are that like people have like my husband who did research at AI at OSU, and he loves doing this, and he's wired up our living room. You know, you go in it and the light comes on and all this kind of stuff. It's that kind of a thing. So these are umbrella structures that like rounded shapes that then cover the outside of the buildings, and they have on them solar panels,
Mm.
so they absorb the sun's energy, and uh, they they have little fans on their edges so that they can generate wind power, and they can change their angles so that if the wind is coming from a certain direction, they can then go into the wind so that the wind goes past the fans to take advantage of that, to run the fans, to generate the power. If it's, they can change, they can use the wind. But if it's too stormy and windy, they can then go down over the buildings, and then the buildings are protected by these structures. When it rains, they've got like leaf things that come up, and then they channel all the water down these drains in the middle, generating water power and saving, collecting the rain, you
Nice.
know? They
Nice.
they go over the streets, producing shade. They protect from storms with this. Going back, so they've got wind power, water power, solar power. They do their shades. They can, and then in the basements where they're also, like, we're living with plants, we're living beside our plants, and inside the buildings we have structures that are like these umbrella structures that then are like these domes over these plants, creating these artificial weather patterns in the domes for the plants.
Wow.
And the cities then are then uh, weatherproof in that way, because these umbrella structures, and they're not just one umbrella, it's like a city with these umbrella structures that can connect with each other. They can be individual, they go over balconies, they go over the roof structures. I mean, it was amazing. It was
Can't
amazing.
wait to find out what material that is if I reincarnate.
Exactly. And I mean, they include solar panels. So, like, we have solar panels on our roof. It wouldn't be that hard to put solar panels on other kind of metal surfaces to do this. And the motion, I mean, we can now make robots. So that's nothing that we can't already do. We can make structures that move. So it's the only part of it, I was thinking about it, the only part of it that that we have more development to do might be if we want to collect this energy. So batteries, we might need better batteries for that. But on the other hand, because when it's nighttime, it tends to be more windy. We can collect the wind, sun, and water. Also, in these cities, the way it looked to me in the vision, they use composting toilets. I mean, we already have those. Some people have them in the country. Your poops go in a bin, and then that's aged. And then, just like other composting, you use it on the soil. So, and we recycle the water, clean and recycle all the water. So we're completely independent. The cities are independent of any other energy source. We have it all inside the city.
Which is it's kind of like it's kind of like going back to the way things were, like not this Pisces age, but probably the age before, right? The age where we lived with the earth, but now it makes sense with Aquarius. Aquarius is the future. It's futuristic, it's robotic, it's inventive. And so, like, it sounds like people find a way to be inventive, and we have to return to living with cycles and rhythms of nature. But because of the environment, we find like a futuristic way to do that.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? I
I
mean,
love it. I gotta tell you real quick. When I went in 2011, when my friend took me to the Earth ship. There's a guy who's already invented a very strange, cool looking house. I don't know if you know about Earth ships, but I thought, oh man, this is gonna be kind of boring. I wasn't really interested in it. But when I went there, I cried. You live with your plants in the living room. The trees grow. It's always 70 degrees in there. And I knew, I was like, this is, I mean, I won't buy a house until I can afford to build one of those. I refuse. I want to live like that. You compost, you use the water 4 times. I mean, it's just,
Exactly. We can do all of this. We can
yeah.
do all of this. And that makes our cities independent. There are already places in the United States where people can't live comfortably because of the weather. I mean,
Right?
this would isolate us from that. And the other side of it is that it would isolate us from the nature that we're now exploiting. We won't have to dig for coal or oil or gas or any of that stuff. We won't
Yeah.
be killing the animals or making them extinct. We won't be messing with the rest of the planet. We'll be no longer, and the vision was that we'll be no longer the dominant species, in the sense that we are now, where we're imposing our will on everything. Although, we will be isolated in our hives, but we can continue our evolution, our culture, our civilization, our communities organized around diversity. Will be continuing as human creatures, doing the things we do with our weird mentalities, you know what I mean? Without hurting anything else, you know?
That's great.
And so
That's,
it made me really happy. And so I say, how to get there from here? And this is the end of it. So, how to get there from here? First of all, buy local, support the community. These things we have to pull into the cities. We have to stop exporting and importing from other places. We have to become community centered, not communities of uniculture, communities built around diversity, but nonetheless inside communities.
yeah.
And then, second, we need somebody to build these umbrella structures.
I gotta tell you really quick, this is so weird, but my daughter told me when she was really little, I said, "What did you come to do?" She goes, "I came to build the buildings of the future. I'm one of the ones that help the buildings of the future." So when you're telling me this, I'm like, and she
Oh,
went to like this modeling agency, and this guy read her fingertips. He's like, "I'm sorry, honey, you're a," well, her father's a carpenter, a very good one. He goes, "I'm sorry, your fingertips say that you're here to build things." And so when you're saying that, I'm like, is she gonna
okay.
help with that?
Absolutely, go for it. I mean, the sooner we build them, the sooner we can become independent and
Yeah.
stop screwing with the other entities,
I'm afraid we're going to be forced into that. I mean, I think the
Exactly.
time of
We'll be forced. We'll be
doing it
forced.
softly is over. I think at this point, the people aren't getting it. I mean, some are, but
Exactly. So buy local, someone invent the umbrella structures, move into cities. There are a lot of people who really want to go and live in the outback, so to speak, in the country. But as we're already seeing, that's becoming less and less possible. And so the idea of this is we humans have to come into the cities and figure out how to live in diversity supporting communities. Make urban gardens, cultivate the companion plants that go with us into the hives to be our urban agriculture. And be nice to plants. Stop using poisons, right? And then,
and eat their fruit. We're eating fruit that we get from Kroger that's from Guatemala in the summertime when I have a cherry tree that produces cherries, and I literally feel her sadness that her cherries are being wasted. I mean, I eat as many as I can reach, but I'm just like, but we're not even connected to the trees and the edibles in our own yard.
oh yeah, yeah, and that poor fruit, some of that fruit, I mean, it's picked way before it's ripe. And
Yeah.
it's not that good for you anymore. They spray it with poisons. Like, for example, the outside of apples, they artificially color the outside of apples because people like uh, apples that are red, so they color them red. Well, that's not good for you.
Oh, gross.
And they put some of the apples, you'll feel it's got a waxy cover on it.
Yeah.
No, no.
That's so unnatural. We need to take our technology for things that are good for us, like you said,
Exactly.
like the vision.
Exactly, exactly. And especially important, you know, strengthen our intuition, strengthen your intuitions and senses so that you can hear the spirit voices. And as you were saying, hear the trees, hear the plants, hear the spirits, hear the spirits. They talk to us, they want to help us, they want to guide us. We're living in echoes, and our misery affects them. So they want us to get our shit together, excuse my French, and they want us to get our stuff together, and they want to help us, and we should help them. And so we need to, and that's part of your mission. That's your mission, and my mission as well, to help people do that. Strengthen your intuitions and senses so you hear the spirit voices. So when the buffalo spirits give advice, you hear it. Or when your ancestors give advice, you hear it. That is so important, so important. So thinking about this future, fills me with bliss and joy. Humans retreat into the hives and continue their cultural, social, physical, spiritual evolution. Nature continues to evolve, live without our interference. So there
That's
you go.
pretty powerful. Okay. This is the age we're entering here.
That's the age of Aquarius.
That's the
So,
age of
that's the water, that's the water, that's the change, that's how we adjust. And that's where in the visions that I've seen, that's where we're going. And that's where we should allow ourselves to go. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you.